The release of 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim on the Nintendo Switch was pretty highly anticipated. I personally had seen a lot of people talking about it on social media leading up to its release, and while I didn't purchase it at launch, unless I'm streaming it and know it's not censored, I wait. And this is a game that's had controversy surrounding its English release because back in 2020, when it released on PlayStation, we found out that a lot of dialogue was changed. They completely rewrote a cross-dressing character to make them non-binary, and with the Switch release, I know people were hoping that it would be closer to what the original Japanese version of the game gives players, but now we know, unfortunately, it leaves the censored dialogue intact. I have a few things to show off, but before we get into the topic at hand, if you enjoy the content that I create, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. Follow me on social media like Twitter or mine so that you can see when my content is posted, and of course if you do really enjoy the videos and the live streams that I create, please consider becoming a Dark Titan via Patreon for just $1 a month, or supporting the channel via YouTube memberships. All of the links are in the description, and of course I do really appreciate all of the support. So I wanted to start off with this article from back in 2020 where the initial situation is documented, and then we're going to go into the newer article from just a couple of days ago. But it says the English translation changes more than expected. Diligent individuals sifting through the English and Japanese versions of the game have discovered that the English translation is more butchered than initially let on, a turn of events that critics were likely expecting ever since the revelation of it rewriting a cross-dresser character. I remember reading about this, and I believe I had talked about it in a live stream back in 2020 when it had happened, but whenever we hear about situations where games and characters and dialogue is censored and toned down, it makes me instantly not want to support a project. It's very disappointing. There are some people out there who will still buy a game, and if you want to buy a game, ultimately that is your choice. I'm not sitting here saying that you're an awful, terrible person if you do want to still play this game, but for me, it definitely ruins the image the game has in my mind. The title previously came under fire after it was learned that the English translation for the game completely rewrote a cross-dressing character and made them non-binary, even though the Japanese translation does not define them as such. Among the new comparisons, changes varied in scale from negligible to highly impactful, with the translator seemingly taking issue with stereotypes and expunging any mentions of sexual assault or perverse things. Of course, this kind of sounds like a classic instance of localizers and translators seeing content in a game they don't like and taking creative liberties, changing around dialogue, changing around characters because they feel like it, because, oh, maybe the original content was too offensive to them and it hurt their delicate sensibilities, so they decided to take matters into their own hands and change content. It says the Japanese version can be seen on top with the Western version below, and below that is a rough translation of the Japanese version. Unfortunately, I've had to talk about a lot of censorship over the past few weeks. If you go to the channel and you look at my previous videos, there's just been a lot of instances of censorship coming out, maybe games from a couple of years ago where interviews have been unearthed. In some cases, newer games coming out have unfortunately been censored. Dialogue has been changed. Outfits have been toned down. It's been running rampant. I mean, censorship has happened quite a lot over the past few years, but it's gotten really bad over the past couple of months. As of late, Nintendo has been known not to make demands of devs and lets them decide the content in their games, so this squarely falls on Atlus and Sega and their localizers. And that's just something I want to make clear. Most likely, none of this is being dictated out of Nintendo, so if you want to blame someone, blame Atlus and Sega. Now, I think that if only one or two lines were changed around in this game, people wouldn't think that much about it. I think that there would definitely be people who would be like, it's not that big of a deal. I'm still gonna buy this game because I want to support it. I've been excited for it. But there are pages and pages and pages of things that they decided to change around dialogue that they toned down, characters they completely rewrote in some instances, which is really disappointing. And now, unfortunately, we know that the Nintendo Switch port does in fact leave the censored dialogue in the game. This was an article from a couple of days ago. It says the game has recently been ported to the Nintendo Switch, and a review of the game suggested that fixes were made to mistranslated lines, but it turns out the port still left in the absurd line that shoehorned in unneeded gender politics. I think after seeing some of the reviews saying, oh, a lot of the mistranslated lines were fixed, people probably started getting excited for this again, thinking, oh my goodness, finally, I'm gonna be able to play this game without it being censored. I'm gonna actually want to support this version of the game. It definitely gets your hopes up when you're seeing, oh, they fixed a bunch of stuff. They changed the mistranslated lines, but unfortunately, there are instances in this game of gender politics that are left in. As previously reported, the game suffered numerous unnecessary changes to its dialogue, with localizers seeing fit to insert irrelevant gender politics and feminist propaganda, in addition to completely rewriting a character to be non-binary. The quote from the review mentioning changes to the translation for the Switch version, it says the game has both an excellent English and Japanese dub. Atlas Localization team has gone back and fixed a couple of odd and mistranslated lines from the original PS4 version's English dub. Oh, they try to play it down. Oh, it was originally only a couple of mistranslated lines, but luckily they've gone back and fixed a bunch of the dialogue. But it says Vanillaware has handled the Switch port with the utmost care, and with some of the changes may even be better than the PlayStation 4 version. A Twitter user, however, learned that one of the more notorious changes to the dialogue remained unchanged in the Nintendo Switch version, with many hoping the port would at least rectify this act of censorship. So yes, while it does sound like they fixed some of the smaller instances of censorship and the changes they made, a lot of the larger ones still exist. It says, asked why he cross-dresses, and in Japanese it says, this is more convenient for me. It lets me keep it a secret that I'm alive, and then the English says, let's say some binaries work for me and others don't. This lets me hide the fact that I'm even alive. And a lot of people were talking about this on social media. It's definitely disappointing to see so many games censored and toned down lately. Localizers going into games and completely rewriting titles because they feel like it, because they think, oh, this initial dialogue was a little too offensive. It could hurt some people's feelings, so I am going to change it. I did talk about this a couple of days ago, and that video will be linked down below, but an old interview reveals the Skies of Arcadia dialogue was completely rewritten because one of the localizers admitted they merely did a rough translation of the game before throwing out the rest of the Japanese text and ad-libbing as they saw fit, a pure example of why many hate localizers and demonstrating that the problem has existed for decades. As someone who absolutely loves games coming out of the Japanese region, I am getting more and more concerned when it comes to supporting titles that are being translated to English because these localizers are doing whatever the hell they feel like with titles. Obviously, I hope this changes. I hope that localizers stop making alterations to dialogue and scenes and characters wherever they see fit. Do I think that's going to happen? Not necessarily. I think that more people need to be talking about situations like this, and it's why I try to cover all of these topics whenever I see them on Sankaku Complex or Bounding into Comics. Wherever I see it, I try to talk about it, but we're seeing more and more instances of localizers changing whatever they feel like, and unfortunately, if you were hoping to support this title on the Nintendo Switch, it does leave censored dialogue intact. But that's all that I really had to discuss in this video. Let everyone know your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed, please make sure to give it a like, share it, and subscribe to the channel. And of course, if you didn't, make sure to give it a dislike. I appreciate your support either way, but I will talk to you all again in the next video really soon.